Hi folks, welcome to my first feedback video. This is an English teacher reacts to work that he set his students to do. Isn't that exciting? I'm in my bedroom here. This is also my YouTube recording studio. I've got a mic here, got a screen recorder running on my computer and the iPad. So hopefully I can give you some feedback on the work you've done, give you some ideas, and generally react to the excellent productive stuff you've been up to. So let's jump straight into it. Yara is our first submission. We have four today, 4 students that submitted to the public forum. Massive respect to you guys, very brave to do that at the start of the semester, but I appreciate it. As you can see, we've got some highlighting that I've done already on here. Let's just take a look at what that means. Feedback colours, blue. These are language issues. So this is the linguistic stuff we talked last week or 2 weeks ago about the different competences. Linguistic competence remains a bit of an issue here. So blue is language issues, which I'll talk about. We have green, which is idiomatic issues. What does that mean? Well, idiomatic means that it's not wrong linguistically, but it's not really what we say. So it doesn't sound quite natural, or it might have an undesirable impact on the reader. That's the idiomatic stuff. Finally, we have the yellow stuff, which is just, I love it. This is stuff where I think, boom, you guys rule. You've done some excellent English. It's idiomatically great, or it's linguistically great, or maybe it's great in terms of socio-cultural competence, discourse competence, or indeed strategic competence, which is the last of the 4 competence areas we talked about last week. I'll also be talking about this concept of PCAF that I introduced last week in the video: purpose, content, audience, form, why, who, what, how. All of this is relevant when we try to do a good piece of writing, which is to achieve the purpose for the reader it's intended for. So straight away, let's look at Yara's submission. I'll talk you through my process. At first glance, I feel good about this because I see paragraphs that seem to be consistently formatted. It's a good sign. Sometimes you get an email and it's lots of individual sentences, no real paragraphs. It kind of looks like a bit of a mess and you already get a bad feeling. I do, at least, as an English teacher. We have a few minor issues at the start here. So people don't know this, but you always have to start emails with a capital letter, even though you have a comma here. I know it's weird. I know it doesn't make sense. In German, you don't do that, but we do that in English. So always try and remember, start with a capital letter. Next issue is commas in English. Now, Yara understandably has put a comma here in front of the word that, because in German, for das, you always need a comma, right? You actually don't in English. Generally speaking, if you're in doubt with commas, don't include them, leave them out. You don't need as many commas as you think you do, and you don't need as many commas as you do in German. So things that we are a bit unsure about that we need to look at. The first one's going to be commas. I'm going to do some work on that with you this semester, and also email formalities. So the first paragraph here that Yara's done is really good. It gets the main point across. It introduces the whole concept of the email. It's not too long, and it sets out a structure for the email. You see that we're going to have the results of a meeting here, and then later in the email we're going to have some strategy suggestions for 2010. So I like a lot the functional purpose of this introduction. Why have I highlighted this finally in green? I think that it's walking the line, this word finally, between the urgency that you need, because the board is not really reacting quickly enough in this situation at Video Planet, but it might be going too far. It might be suggesting that the author of the email, Yara in this case, that she knows what needs to happen and that the board doesn't know. Now that's probably true, that's probably what's happening here, but you've got to be careful because you work for this company as well, right? And if it is too obvious to you that something needs to change, you could have said something, right? You could have already mentioned it at some stage. And that's the fine line you got to walk as a middle manager in all of the emails and all of the writing we're going to do on this module. You fundamentally do know better. You do know what needs to happen, but you can't be too forthright, too confident in expressing that. Otherwise, people will say, "Well, why haven't you done something about it already? And why has this problem got so far?" So it's always this balance. Rather than saying finally, I would say maybe just the word now. When I say the board now wants to, or just leave it, just say that the board wants to, but without putting finally, I think. But It's debatable. You go either way on that. One more in this paragraph is had a look on the information. This is the issue of prepositions. Okay, these are the little words indicating position or time or the relative relationship between the two different things. They are a nightmare in English, prepositions, but believe me, they're even worse in German. Prepositions, we will look at those later in the module. You always say to look at something, take a look at something. Drauf gucken in German. So obviously you think it would be on, but it's at in English. Very annoying, I know. All right, so let's take a look at the paragraph number 2. First, we have some structural language being used here. I love it, that's why I've put it in yellow. It's so good to just subtly give your reader a bit of a roadmap through the email. Some people would simply start the paragraph with the word considering, but by saying first, where it's clear this is going to be a number of different things. This is enumeration. We talked about it in week 1, and it's great to see here. Good job. And we have like quite a long sentence, this one, but it's fine. It's also got a lot of commas in, but it's fine because I understand it. It's grammatically fine. You wouldn't want to go much longer than this in English sentences, but this is totally okay. And the point of it, it's obvious that normal rental business continues to decline. I think that the word obvious here is okay. With finally, I thought, is it going too far? But with obvious, I think this is good. I think we can say this. I think we can have the confidence to say, guys, it's clear that this is not right. The reason why you can say that is because you are attaching that statement to the data that you have to look at here. So you're not making this statement you're not pulling it out of thin air. It's also not your opinion, right? You're basing it on a consideration of the weekly rental figures. And if you locate like the authority for your statement in a quantitative data source, then you can be all the more forthright, all the more kind of convinced in that statement you make. People tend to sometimes just say, it's obvious that rental business is going to decline. But if they don't link that to some kind of base of evidence, then that argument doesn't have as much force. But because you've done that here, Yara, I think that obvious is a good word to use. Got a bit of a linguistic issue here. Similar it is with purchases. Ähnlich ist es mit. So what we have here is something called interference. It's where one language, interference or interference? I'll check that. It's where one language interferes with the other one. So in German you'd say ähnlich ist es mit Käufer, mit Käufin, dative, but it doesn't work in English. We would have to say the situation is similar with purchases. Okay, that's how it'd have to go. So linguistic interference is a pain, man. I have it a lot in German as well when I say something in German, but it's actually English, but I still say it. Not great. Let's check the spelling. It's interference, isn't it? Yeah, of course it is. I can tell now. Yeah, okay. So interference. This next part I've highlighted yellow because I think it's really good strategic competence. You're putting in place a strategy here to make sure your boss, who's going to be reading this email, doesn't get annoyed or frustrated with the intensity of your argument. You're aware that you're making radical, difficult suggestions here because that's what needs to happen. But you're acknowledging the fact that this is a hard process and you're writing it there. That is showing the reader that you understand his situation in this case. And it's a strategy which means that your subsequent arguments will be listened to by him. It's strategic communicative competence. In most English lessons, you wouldn't get extra credit for this, but I will give it to you because it's exactly what we should be doing. Last part, we just need to move the positioning of this just. This just needs to go, it's accounted for just a quarter of the total rentals, okay? So some issues with word order, but this is not something we really need to worry about too much. All right, let's continue. We have more structure here. On the other hand, but we have an unnecessary comma before that. The rest of this paragraph is great. And then the final paragraph, we get the suggestions, like what we could do. I think that this part here is just some really well expressed English. We could use the revenues of the second business to ensure the existence and finance of the development of our download rental service. We've got modal verbs, could. We have a level of linguistic hedging here. I'm going to start writing some stuff in the good column because there's lots of good stuff here. So let me show you. Modals we like. Could, would, should. Hilfsverben in German, we like that. I also like business vocab. So you're using word revenue rather than sales. It's good because your reader will know this vocab. You're writing this for the boss of the company. He understands these terms. So by using those specialist terms, you chalk up a win in terms of the exactness, the precision of your expression. But that's fine. You won't confuse anybody because the person that you're writing to knows this vocab. We can unite our competence as well as share costs and risks. If I said that to my mum, she wouldn't really know what I was talking about because she's not a business person, for example, but this guy is. This is the way to go. It's a level of discourse competence. You're aware that your reader has the specialist knowledge, the specialist vocab. You're aware that that will allow you to be more precise and exact in your expression, so you're taking that opportunity. So please let me know what you think. Once again, we need to take out these commas. Otherwise, what we have here is a very compact but surprisingly effective email from Yara. It's shorter than some of the other submissions we're going to look at, but in terms of covering the fundamental points, it does a really good job. So there's a lot to like in this. Thank you very much, Yara, for submitting that. So let's move down and check out what Timon has done. We see at first glance straight away, slightly longer email, but again, I get a sense of consistently paragraphed language. So it kind of makes me feel calmer at first glance. It makes a good impression. Let's check the way Timon treats this. I'm glad to hear the board has finally come around on this. Interesting. Now I criticised finally on Yara's example. Nice to hear the board finally wants to implement some new strategies. Here, I'm glad to hear the board has finally come around on this. I think that this works because to come around on something means, it's a good expression, it means to sort of change your viewpoint or change your perspective. It doesn't suggest so much the board was wrong up until this point, it just suggests they had a different perspective, a different opinion. And that's what makes it seem slightly more gentle than the option we had before from Yara. But it's a very subjective thing, guys. So please don't think that I'm saying that this version up here was totally wrong and this is totally right. We're talking about subtle linguistic choices which in the whole of an email, in the totality of the decisions made, will make an impact, right? But each individual one isn't too important in and of itself. I think that what Timon's done really well in the start of this email is to establish the need to act, the urgency of the situation. He says, right here, we both definitely need to act as soon as possible. And once again, just like with Yara, he sets up the structure of the email. So I read the first 3-4 lines and I know as a reader what's going on. I know, and I'm not going to get confused. So this is, of course, strategic and discourse competence. It's putting in place a measure to make sure that your subsequent communication is successful. So structure from you guys is something else I am generally loving. I wonder whether you would have done it anyway or you did it because you looked at my example. I don't care. As long as you're doing it now, life is good. So once again, we've got some excellent structural vocabulary here. Firstly, secondly, thirdly, that's consistent. That means your reader's not going to be confused, be frustrated potentially. And there's loads to like about the way this paragraph is written. I just want to draw attention to a couple of points. Paid downloads went through the roof. To go through the roof. It's an idiom. It's a idiomatic expression. Of course, it's a metaphor as well. Nobody's roof actually got broken. But by using metaphor, simile, generally figurative language, rather than purely literal language, you can add colour, life, energy to your writing. So figurative language is definitely a good thing to explore, though of course you have to be careful. You can't just throw in Shakespearean metaphors throughout a business analysis. But if you never use that, if you stick to strictly literal language, it can get a bit boring. And let's not forget that even if you're writing about business or statistics or trends or stuff to do with numbers, the person reading it is still a human being, and he or she is still going to ultimately be making the decisions, right? So even if you're writing about quantitative topics, you can still use figurative language if you use it carefully. This is a really good example. This I also like. Paid downloads tripled by the end of the year. It is a quick and simple way of slightly simplifying a trend. So it didn't exactly triple, I think, not to the actual percentage, but you can round up or round down, and it makes a lot shorter than saying increased by 62.5% or something. This is a good way of keeping the length of your email down to make it more readable for the intended reader. The not so distant future. This is something that Timon must have read in a book or must have heard on a Netflix show, something like that. It is just a very typical expression. It's idiomatic, and it feels like a native speaker writing it. So if you can include these expressions that you hear on Netflix shows or that you read in books, it always improves the quality of your writing. It's what I work on as well in German, trying to learn these little idiomatic phrases that just make you sound more natural. So this final sentence, what I like here is the complex language. We have two musts in one sentence, two modal verbs, but it's okay because by using this is a coordinating conjunction, so it links together two sentences to make them, or two clauses. That's Tyler, two clauses to make them one sentence. We have we must conclude that, and then we have any successful strategy must rely on. So two completely different verb constructions, but they're linked with a that. So this makes this a complex sentence. Any sentence with more than one clause, more than one that style, becomes a complex sentence. And by putting this that in the middle, Timon achieves a situation where he's not simply stating this is the case, like the successful strategy must do this. He's saying we must conclude that, and it creates this step between him as the reader making an assertion, making a claim, and him putting one step between himself and that claim, which brings the reader into the thinking. That wasn't very well expressed. By saying we must conclude, that subtle use of the word we means that he's bringing the reader in on the conclusion. You're sort of saying, you're not saying I'm saying this, you're not saying I'm telling you this. You're saying that the data that we see, the trends that we see, force us to include that, and then you put the final point. It's sneaky, and I like it. It's subtle but effective. Okay, let's look at the rest of Timon's email now. We have in this paragraph here more good stuff. Good use of the connectives, secondly, and also a good use of what we might call a topic sentence here to introduce the paragraph. So we know here that we're going to talk about the rise of new technologies in the cinema industry. And then we go into it in the bulk of the paragraph. Then we get to the end. It says, nevertheless, these developments, and then these developments refers back to the rise of new technologies. So you have the first sentence and the final sentence of the paragraph about the same thing. And within the paragraph, we get into more detail in the analysis. Let's take a look at the rest of the email. We just got some great vocab and a couple of language points to talk about. Plummeted. This was a word that Timon saw in the materials or my email. Take every opportunity you can to grab nice vocab and start using it in your writing, okay? You can absolutely just steal stuff from texts you read, texts that I give you, the materials that I give you to write about, the texts you see from other students. You have to be like a magpie when it comes to vocab. Magpies famously fly around and they steal things, right? You need to be stealing good vocab everywhere. Nobody will care, no one will mind, and you'll write better English. A couple of points on the final paragraph. We have some more great vocab here. To realign, to start something from scratch, to outperform our competitors. It's a combination of idiomatic language, to start something from scratch. That's something that you wouldn't necessarily know, but maybe you've heard somebody say it, maybe you've seen it on a TV show. Look it up, start using it. And then realign, outperform. These are the kind of business-like verbs which show that you understand your reader is a specialist in the field and make the writing more suitable for the reader, more effective for the reader. Couple of points we have to change here. Taking all this into consideration, we must assess. What we really need to say is conclude, which we had before, so maybe we don't want to say that. Or we need to say something like we must understand. Either of those would be good options. Assess. Yeah, we must. Assess doesn't quite work there. We could say our assessment must be. That's probably what we need to say here. Our assessment must be that. All right. Good. So, final part here. Getting our advantages together. Both company would surely benefit. Let's go with combining our advantages. No together. Then we have overall really a great email here from Timon. Really good. Lots of great examples. Thank you very much for uploading. Love it. Okay, so Toni's email is hilarious and creative. Here we have a whole paragraph which shows Toni's ability to see the future and see there is going to be a company called Netflix coming. Remember, it's 2009, 2010 when this email is being written. I laughed. This was funny. Okay, so let's just go through a few issues here. First of all, we have the capital letter, obviously. And, Toni, we have issues with the prepositions as well. These prepositions are clearly going to be problematic for us. Like I said, they are always difficult. You sort of have to learn them, every single one. Let's just go through these ones here. First of all, the board wants to react to such a critical topic. And then we have again here, react to, reagieren auf, verstehe ich, but react to in English. But then we have, but here, annoyingly, we actually do need an on. We need to work out a strategy on how to. In German, no preposition required. And Strategie, wie wir, das geht. Doesn't work in English, unfortunately. So annoying. But what I like about this is we have some more structural language in here as well. Again, same as with the other emails, we have, first of all, we analyse the current trends on the market. This is a topic sentence, and we set up a structure which makes the reader understand, okay, there's going to be more points coming later. I would suggest we could try introducing some bullet points here, maybe, Toni, if you're going to look at a number of statements which kind of are too long. If all the statements together are too long to be one paragraph, but they're kind of too short to be their own individual paragraphs, in this kind of email, I would consider using bullet points. I wouldn't use it in all texts. Obviously, like an essay or something, you can't really use bullet points, but in email, you certainly can. I find myself doing it a lot. Now, so that you could consider doing that. I wouldn't say it's essential. Since and for, a little bit of grammar. If we are talking about a period of time, like 10 years, I've been living in Berlin for 10 years, then we take for. If we take a point in time, for example, I've been living in Berlin since 2008, then we say since. In German, it's always seit 10 Jahren, seit 2008. Again, annoying, we have to try and remember this. So for is a time period and since is since a date. And we have a bit of a tense issue here. We don't say doing it in real life. we're missing the word life there. Doing it in real life, contrary to doing it online, we need to have here is getting. Because we're talking about something which is a temporary process or event which is happening right now. If it just gets more and more unpopular, that will be something that is permanent, is always the state. But we're talking about something which is specifically happening now. Okay, second, say as friendly as possible, renting a movie is dead. I like the boldness of it. Again, it walks a fine line. Is it too much? Is it going to frustrate or confuse or slightly irritate your reader? Or does the reader need to hear it? Is it important that the reader understands this here? I think it's possible to argue either way. I think because you have this slightly ironic, slightly humorous way of introducing the idea, it's acceptable to write it like this. That attitude is also underlined by the next sentence. It's pretty radical to say these things as a manager. This is a lot like the point from Yara at the start where she said, I know it's hard, okay? This is this very smart sort of socio-linguistic stroke strategic competence step you take to ensure the reader is, to show empathy basically with the reader's position. Some people, I guess you guys, do it intuitively, and that's a very good thing. If in your email you haven't done this, then consider doing that you might want to indicate you understand that some of the things you're suggesting are rather radical. Now, Toni goes on to talk about a mild approach versus a more radical approach. I think the word mild is possibly not quite what we want. I think we need the word gentle. A gentle approach. Just a question of semantics. It's not wrong to say mild at all. You'd be understood, but I think gentle would be more what people would say to express that idea between gentle, radical. Christmas, for reasons unbeknownst to me, is capitalized. Capitalizations in English are a massive problem, like with many things. In German, you have a very good system. You just capitalize all the nouns, right? That's a great idea. I wish we would do that in English. It just makes every single thing completely clear, whether it's a title or whether it's a day of the week or a place or a name. If it's a noun, you capitalize it. We don't have that in English, annoyingly. So while Christmas, movie and trilogies are all nouns, Christmas gets capitalized because no one knows why, but the other things don't. So it's names. Stephen would be capitalized. Berlin, that would be capitalized. It's days of the week, inexplicably, and then it's certain things like national holidays, so Christmas, Easter also is capitalized, and company names, Apple, Google, that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you don't capitalize nouns. If in doubt, don't capitalize it, like with commas. So here, I'm not going to comment on this paragraph from about Netflix. It's funny though, and it's well written as well. You can read all of the texts are online on Moodle. You should read them. They're all really good. A couple of things I just want to change here. This brings me to our last thoughts regarding this topic, not belonging to this topic. Taking big steps towards the aforementioned. That is a posh word. Schon erwähnte. Has it got an E in? I believe it has. There we go. The aforementioned radical approach. You can use a word like that if you want to. It's unusual, but it's completely correct. Sounds good as well. And finally, at last. You don't want to say at last. Zuletzt. You want to say finally. Here, this is a case where we need a comma and finally is okay. I want to, spelling's not quite right there. I want to apologise for the length of this email. Indeed, we have to be aware of email conventions. I would say that Toni's right. This is quite a long email, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It all there was no beating around the bush. He got straight to the point. But I think that acknowledging if your text goes beyond the normal boundaries of the genre of email, for example, not a bad thing to apologise for that, possibly even earlier on in the introduction by saying, I'm afraid this is going to be a bit long, but I've tried to structure it as well as I can. Just again, it's all about showing the reader that you understand their situation, that you have taken their specific situation into account in your writing. That's very reassuring as a reader to sense that. So overall, great text, Toni. Thanks very much for submitting it. Finally, then we come on to Timo's text. Also, an excellent job here. We need to start with the capital again. Once again, we have this really great structuring. And we see this consistently applied throughout the email. Now, this is I'm just going to point out a couple of things with Timo's email. It's very solid. We've got good vocab in it, just like with the others, and we've got this sort of professional feel through the use of business vocab. It's really great. A couple of minor linguistic things. By almost 3 times, this will be an example to take a leaf out of Timon's book and say tripling, rather than saying by increasing by almost 3 times. Just taking every opportunity where you can keep things shorter if the language is available to do that. Then let's look at this second one, which on the one side, on the other side, classic mistake, because in German you say auf der einen Seite. In English we need to say on the one hand and then on the other hand. I know people who speak completely fluent English, and German people, and they still say side. I often say hand in German, which doesn't make much sense. Which is pretty, schön. Positive would be better. Pretty in English literally only means, visibly pretty. Then in the next paragraph, we got some nice structural vocab, introducing it. Then we have this idea of take on. Now, take on is a phrasal verb. That is a verb which is a verb like take and a preposition like on, to take something on. That makes it a phrasal verb. Now, these are great verbs to use because they sound very natural. People use phrasal verbs a lot. Native speakers use them a lot. We got to use them in the right place, though. So you can absolutely take on a competitor, to take them on. That means to take the fight to them, to compete against them. What we can't do, though, is take on a problem, really. We have to change our verb. We have to say tackle, which would have to tackle immediately. So you tackle the problem, but you take on a competitor. It also became clear. Wurde klar, became clear. This is a good paragraph, and there's good analysis here, as you can see if you read it. Final paragraph here. Once again, we have the idea about merging with Blockbuster, merging with a competitor. It's a radical idea, but it's what the company needs to do to eventually become something like Netflix. Unlikely that's going to happen, but that's what Netflix did. I need to look at the verb to suggest. Now, certain verbs require or can be used with other verbs, like decide to go to the cinema. I considered learning French. They suggested leaving earlier to be there on time. What you notice is that with the second verb used with these verbs, you either put it in the ing form or you put it in the infinitive. For example, I decided to go to bed. To go to bed. You can't say I decided going to bed. But you can't say he considered to do something. You have to say he considered learning the guitar. So consider uses the ing form, but decide uses the infinitive form. Now, unfortunately, there's not really a system here. You just have to sort of learn all the verbs which require the ing form and all the verbs which require the infinitive. Suggest is a popular one. Unfortunately here, we need the ing form for suggest. So he said, I would suggest cooperating or even merging. It applies to all the verbs which follow it. Then we have that correct. So ing form, infinitive stroke ing form. Some people call this the gerund, but the gerund is actually only one form of the ing form. That is something else we need to look at. All right. Once again, though, a really solid email from Timo. All 4 of these people deserve great praise because they put their work out there at the start of the semester. And I've enjoyed reading it, and I've been able to tease out a lot of points that will be useful for all of us. So Yara, Toni, Thimo, Timon, props weiter so. Thank you very much. If you submitted on the teacher upload, that's also completely cool. I'm going to start looking at those tonight and I'll send you feedback individually. Let's take a look then at our list of things. These are all the things here on the left that we're doing really, really well. Modal verbs, business vocab, great structure, great use of figurative language where it counts, good idiomatic phrases, topic sentences, phrasal verbs. Lots to celebrate in this writing. And I think a fundamental sense for me that you guys have understood the reader's position, and you've understood that in order to achieve the purpose of this email, writing to analyse, you need to carefully consider your use of content and form, and we see that in the advanced structures and vocab and phrases that you guys are using. We've got a sort of a little to-do list here: commas, email, formalities, prepositions, interference, word order capitalization, and ing and ing, infinitive and ing forms. I'll be integrating those topics into the lessons going forward. And today we have a lesson, we're going to start looking at some other examples of writing to analyse. You guys are experts by now. You're going to tell me which ones are successful and which ones are not. Looking forward to that. Our next topic will be writing to persuade. So we're going to look at how not just analysis, but persuasion is also very important in linguistic circumstances. Looking forward to teaching you that. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys in the next video.